Welcome to Simple Things, where small stories spark big changes and growth begins with honesty. I used to think I was just admiring beauty. Turns out, I was addicted to attraction itself. Every woman I saw, a fantasy, a craving, not love, not even desire, just compulsion dressed as curiosity. And it was ruining everything. My name's Reid, 31 years old. On paper, I'm exactly what you'd call normal. I pay taxes. I hold the door for strangers. I own a mattress that didn't come rolled up in a box. I even have a therapist. So I guess you could say I'm thriving by millennial standards. But beneath all that normalcy was a twitch, an itch I couldn't quite scratch. Let me backtrack. I wasn't some smooth-talking womanizer or walking red flag. I didn't catcall. I didn't harass. I didn't slide into random DMs with you up. I was respectful, friendly, quiet, even. But in my head, it was a damn circus. Every woman I passed at the grocery store, on the subway, in the office elevator became a canvas for fantasy. Not necessarily sexual. Just inflated, imagined, idealized. I'd project entire personalities onto people I didn't even know the names of. I could fall in like with someone just because she wore Converse and carried a Murakami novel, or because she laughed like wind chimes in late spring, or because she looked sad, and I thought I could fix it. It wasn't romantic. It was compulsive. Like mental gum I couldn't stop chewing. And it wasn't just a passing phase. This had been going on since I was 13, back when I thought love was supposed to feel like a heart attack. Hollywood didn't help. Neither did Instagram. The world kept handing me images of what desire was supposed to look like: effortless, constant, and always visually appealing. So I complied. My brain became a jukebox of attractions, one new face. One new scenario, one new fantasy at a time. I didn't chase these women in real life. God? No. But in my mind, I was in 1,000 love stories a week. And here's the kicker. I thought this made me romantic, sensitive, deep, a lover of women. Not in the sleazy way, but in that tortured artist, soft boy. I write poetry in my journal kind of way. But over time, it got heavy, really heavy, because every time I met a real woman, a flawed, wonderful, multidimensional human being, I struggled. I couldn't connect. I'd compare. I'd lose interest. Not because they weren't enough, but because they weren't the fantasy. And that realization that I was using people quietly, invisibly, even kindly as projections of my own addiction, that hit like a brick to the chest. I wasn't in love. I was in withdrawal. From my own delusion, that was the moment I knew something had to change. It started unraveling on a Tuesday. Funny, right? You always expect these revelations to hit at 3 a.m. during a thunderstorm or something dramatic like that. But no, it was a regular Tuesday. I was on a third date with a woman named Elise. Smart, charming, made her own kimchi, and read nonfiction by choice. She was the kind of person you'd actually want to build a life with. And me? I was bored. Not because she did anything wrong, but because my brain kept doing this thing. It kept scanning the room for someone more interesting, more mysterious, more unknown. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't attracted to women. I was attracted to the possibility of women. The ones I hadn't met yet, the versions that lived only in my imagination, untouched by reality, or God forbid, actual human complexity. Elise was real, and I was too broken to appreciate that. After the date, I sat in my car for nearly an hour. No music. No podcasts, just the low hum of shame buzzing in my ears. And that shame, it wasn't new. I had just gotten really good at ignoring it. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my journal, not the digital one on my phone, the real one. The one with the stiff leather cover and the pages that smell like forgotten bookstores. And I wrote, I think I'm addicted to romantic novelty. I think I don't know what intimacy feels like anymore. I think I might be afraid of real connection. It was like admitting to a crime, a silent, subtle crime against my own future. Because let's be honest, how do you build anything meaningful if your brain keeps flipping the channel? How do you love someone if you're always half watching a highlight reel of hypothetical strangers in the back of your mind? The weeks that followed were uncomfortable in ways I can't fully describe. Every time I caught myself turning my head on the street, I asked, "What are you hoping to find?" Reid. Another mirage. Another story that won't require you to show up fully. I started noticing how often I romanticize people I didn't know. Baristas, joggers, librarians. It wasn't admiration. It was escape. A loophole in emotional responsibility. And the worst part, I thought I was deep for doing it. The truth is, I was hiding from rejection, from vulnerability, from the quiet. Terrifying work of seeing another person and letting them see me back. I thought being a lover of women meant loving everything about them. But really, I wasn't loving them at all. I was loving what they symbolized: adventure, validation, possibility, relief. None of which had anything to do with who they actually were. Facing that hurt. But it was the kind of hurt that tells you you're finally onto something real. There's no rehab for romantic projection. No 12-step program for people addicted to potential. But if there were, the first step would have been mine. Stop looking. It sounds simple. It isn't. Not when your brain is wired to scan for fantasy like a dopamine hound sniffing out the next hit. So I started with the small things. Walking through the park without letting my eyes linger. Sitting in a cafe and actually reading instead of mentally casting strangers in my imaginary rom-coms. Deleting the hot girl on subway notes I used to jot down like some pathetic director of a film that would never exist. Every moment became a war between the man I had been and the man I was trying to become. And I'll be honest, sometimes I lost. There were days when I still romanticized strangers. Not because I wanted to, but because it felt familiar. Like an old sweater that doesn't fit anymore. But you keep reaching for it when you're cold. The hardest part wasn't just stopping the thoughts. It was facing what was underneath them. The loneliness. The deep, aching sense that I'd used fantasy to wallpaper over something more broken. I wasn't looking for women. I was looking for worth, for proof that I was desirable, that I could still imagine being loved even if only in fiction. Because real love, it required me to be real, messy, incomplete, human. And I didn't know how to be that. Not really. That's when I reached out to my therapist and told her everything. Every detail I was too embarrassed to say out loud before. How I created entire personalities around strangers. How I couldn't stay present with real women because my mind kept fleeing to what ifs. How I feared that maybe I wasn't capable of actual intimacy anymore. And instead of recoiling, she looked at me and said, "You're not broken. You're just scared." Those 6 words cracked something open in me. Because she was right. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't a creep. I was a human being who never learned how to sit still in discomfort. So I replaced it with infatuation, imagination, escape. That day, I made a new kind of commitment not to stop the thoughts entirely, but to meet them with curiosity. To ask, why now? What am I avoiding? To pause, breathe, and come back to reality: messy, flawed, beautiful reality. I started journaling not just about my fantasies, but about my feelings. I listed the traits I admired in people and asked if I lived by those same values. I unfollowed accounts that turned people into objects. And when I saw someone beautiful on the street, I let myself notice, then let it go. No story, no fantasy, just presence, one breath at a time. I was retraining my mind, and with each little win, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because I'd conquered desire, but because I'd finally stopped hiding from myself. I didn't wake up one day magically cured. There was no fireworks moment where I suddenly stopped noticing women or craving that quick spark of novelty. But I did wake up, slowly, into something better. Clarity. Clarity that love isn't found in the endless swiping, the street-side glances, or the what-ifs whispered by your restless imagination. It's found in staying in the room, staying in the discomfort, staying with someone long enough to see who they really are, and letting them see you too. One afternoon, I sat across from a woman who didn't fit any fantasy I would have imagined 5 years ago. She was thoughtful, sharp-tongued, allergic to small talk, and challenged me in ways that used to make me bolt. And as we talked, really talked, I realized I wasn't scanning the room. I wasn't editing her into something else in my head. I was listening, present, there. And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not butterflies, not obsession, just calm, the real kind. The kind that comes when you're no longer performing, when you're not running from loneliness or chasing approval with every interaction. The kind that tells you you're enough, even without a story playing in your head. That's when I knew I'd made it. Not to perfection, but to something better. Awareness. And with awareness came freedom. Now, when I walk down the street and someone catches my eye, I smile. And then I let them go. Not because I'm ignoring them, but because I finally understand. Not everyone who makes your heart skip is meant to stay. Not every flicker of curiosity deserves a narrative. Sometimes, the most romantic thing you can do is allow people to remain strangers. We live in a culture that screams more and more beauty, more options, more stimulation, more stories. But what if what we really need is less projection, less performance, less chasing, and more depth, more stillness, more truth? So now I ask you, the one watching or listening to this, when was the last time you were truly present with someone? When was the last time you saw them not as a fantasy, not as a fix, not as your next dopamine rush, but as a real, flawed, wonderful human being? And more importantly, when was the last time you let yourself be seen? Because maybe, just maybe, the love we're all looking for isn't waiting out there in the next face on the street. Maybe it's hiding in the one place we've been afraid to go, ourselves. If this story echoed something inside you, if you've ever felt trapped in your own mind, chasing versions of connection that vanish the second you get close, know this: you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just waking up. If you want more stories like this, raw, honest, quietly defiant against the noise, you can stay with me here. Subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Not for the clicks, but for the conversation. Because growth doesn't happen in silence. It happens in spaces like this where we dare to feel, to reflect, and maybe, just maybe, to change. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.